Andy Safian was a man who always strove for stability and order. Working as a dean at a small-town New England college, he was a well-respected man who cared about his students and colleagues. His life seemed perfect with the cozy Victorian home he shared with his wife Tracy and plans for the future that included children and a long, happy life. Tracy, an elementary school teacher, was the complete opposite of him, energetic, cheerful, with a bright smile that could melt any heart. They were young, in love, and sure that only happiness awaited them ahead. However, their idyll began to crumble when there was a series of attacks on women in the city. The police were confused as the perpetrator acted carefully, leaving no trace. Andy, as a dean, found himself involved in the investigation as one of the victims was a student of his college. This added tension to his life, but he tried not to bring his worries home so as not to alarm Tracy. However, their lives soon changed even more when a new man entered their home. One day, Andy ran into Jed Hill, a charismatic and confident surgeon who had recently moved to town. Jed was a man who immediately attracted attention. His manners, wit, and professionalism made him the center of any company. Andy quickly took a liking to him, and when he learned that Jed was looking for a place to live, he offered him a room in their house. Tracy had been against it at first. She felt that the presence of a stranger would disturb their comfort and tranquility. But Andy convinced her that it would be temporary, and the money they would receive for the rent would help with the renovation of the house. Tracy reluctantly agreed. Jed quickly became a part of their lives. He was charming, always willing to help, and seemed to fit in perfectly with their family. However, his self-confidence sometimes annoyed Tracy. She felt that Jed knew too much about them and meddled in their affairs too often. But Andy didn't notice this. He was glad that he had a new friend who could support him in difficult times. Meanwhile, Tracy's health began to deteriorate. She complained of stomach pains, but refused to go to the doctor, writing it off as stress. Andy was worried, but Tracy assured him that everything was fine. One day, however, the pain became so severe that Tracy lost consciousness. Andy panicked and took her to the hospital, where Jed, as a surgeon, took responsibility for her treatment. He performed emergency surgery, and when it was over, told Andy the terrible news: Tracy had an ectopic pregnancy, and to save her life he had to remove her ovaries. This meant she would never be able to have any more children. Andy was shocked. He felt guilty for not insisting that Tracy see a doctor sooner. He tried to support her, but Tracy withdrew into herself. She blamed Andy for letting Jed interfere in their lives, and their relationship began to crumble. Andy felt helpless. He didn't know how to help his wife and didn't understand why she was pushing him away. Soon the situation became even more complicated. Tracy sued Jed, accusing him of medical malpractice. She claimed that the surgery had been performed without her consent and that Jed had overstepped his authority. Jed, in turn, defended his actions. He claimed that he had saved her life and that he had no other choice. At one of the court hearings, he uttered a phrase that shocked everyone: "I am God." This statement caused a storm of emotion. Some considered him arrogant and self-confident. Others admired his professionalism and confidence. Andy found himself in a difficult situation. He wanted to support Tracy, but he couldn't help but recognize that Jed had really saved her life. He sensed that something was wrong between them, but he couldn't figure out what it was. His doubts intensified when he began to notice oddities in Tracy's behavior. She became secretive, avoided talking, and often left the house without explanation. Andy decided to conduct his own investigation. He started by checking Tracy's past. He found out that she had been married before they met, but had kept it from him. This discovery shocked him. He began to question Tracy's sincerity and her motives. Then he discovered that Tracy and Jed knew each other before Jed moved into their home. This discovery was the final straw for him. Andy began to suspect that Tracy and Jed were conspiring. He remembered how Jed had come into their lives, how quickly he had become part of their family, and how strange Tracy had acted after the surgery. He decided to check Tracy's medical records and discovered that she had never been pregnant. The surgery Jed had performed was part of their plan. They wanted to get a large insurance payout using Andy as a pawn. Andy was shocked. He couldn't believe that the woman he loved could do this to him. He felt betrayed and humiliated, but instead of giving up, he decided to fight. He gathered all the evidence he could find and went to the police. He told them of his suspicions and provided Tracy's medical records. In the final scene, Tracy and Jed were arrested. Andy was left alone, but he was relieved. He realized that despite the ordeal, he had maintained his integrity and dignity. He knew that a new life was ahead of him and he was ready to start from scratch.